Another explosive revelation has emerged about Prince Andrew's life inside Royal Lodge. New reports confirm that palace officials have quietly cut off funding to his private security team. This means Andrew is now personally paying for armed protection out of his own rapidly dwindling resources. The decision was made weeks ago, but kept under wraps. King Charles reportedly authorized the move after Andrew refused repeated requests to downsize and relocate to Frogmore Cottage. Palace insiders say this was the final straw in a standoff that has been escalating for months. Andrew's security costs run approximately £3 million per year. Without royal funding, he must cover this enormous expense himself. But his financial situation is already precarious. He has no official income, no royal duties, and no public role that generates revenue. The question everyone is asking is simple. How long can he afford to stay? Royal Lodge is a 30-room mansion on the Windsor estate. Andrew signed a 75-year lease in 2003 for a reported £1 million upfront payment. The lease requires him to maintain the property to a standard commensurate with a Grade 2 listed building. That maintenance alone costs hundreds of thousands of pounds annually. The roof needs repairs. The exterior requires repainting. The grounds demand constant upkeep. Andrew agreed to these terms when he had royal funding and patronage. Now he has neither. One former palace aide described the situation as a slow-motion eviction. The palace cannot forcibly remove him because he holds a legal lease. But they can make staying financially impossible. And that appears to be exactly what is happening. Andrew's defenders claim he is being unfairly punished. They argue that he has not been convicted of any crime and should not be treated like a pariah by his own family. But palace officials see it differently. They point to his catastrophic 2019 BBC interview. They reference his association with Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. They note the settlement he paid to Virginia Giuffre despite denying her allegations. They emphasize that he was stripped of military titles and royal patronages for a reason. In their view, Andrew's refusal to accept reality is damaging the monarchy. His insistence on maintaining a mansion he cannot afford sends a message of entitlement and illusion. His unwillingness to cooperate with King Charles's attempts to streamline royal finances undermines efforts at modernization, and his continued presence in such a prominent royal residence creates ongoing public relations problems. The palace has offered him Frogmore Cottage multiple times. It is smaller, but still substantial. It is already renovated and maintained. It would cost far less to run. But Andrew has consistently refused, reportedly saying it would be a humiliation to downsize. Those close to him say he views Royal Lodge as his last remaining symbol of status. He has already lost his titles, his patronages, his public role, and his reputation. Giving up the mansion would feel like surrendering completely. So he is digging in, even as the financial walls close in around him. But the pressure is mounting from multiple directions. Beyond security costs, Andrew faces ongoing legal and financial uncertainties. The settlement with Virginia Giuffre reportedly cost millions, though the exact figure was never disclosed publicly. His legal fees during that process were substantial. He also has limited options for generating income. He cannot return to public life. No legitimate organization would hire him for a senior role given his toxic reputation. He cannot monetize his royal status through commercial deals without palace approval, which he will never receive. Some reports suggest he has been receiving financial support from Sarah Ferguson. Ferguson, his ex-wife, has had her own financial troubles over the years, but recently secured deals for books and media appearances. However, even her resources would not be sufficient to cover Andrew's security costs indefinitely. One royal biographer noted that Andrew is effectively trapped. He cannot afford to stay at Royal Lodge long term without palace support. But he refuses to leave voluntarily, because doing so would represent a complete capitulation. So he remains in a holding pattern, hemorrhaging money while hoping something changes. The palace, meanwhile, is playing the long game. They know Andrew cannot sustain this financially for more than a year or two at most. So they are willing to wait, applying pressure through withdrawn funding and public scrutiny. Eventually, the mathematics will force his hand, but what Andrew does when that moment arrives remains uncertain. Stay with us, because what we uncover next about his behavior inside Royal Lodge will shock you to your core. While the financial siege plays out publicly, disturbing new details have emerged about Andrew's daily life inside Royal Lodge. Multiple sources with connections to Windsor estate staff describe a man increasingly isolated and erratic. Andrew rarely leaves the property. He has few visitors aside from Sarah Ferguson. He spends hours alone in the mansion's numerous rooms. Staff members who still work on the estate describe an atmosphere of tension. Andrew is reportedly extremely particular about how things are done. He insists on specific routines being followed exactly. Any deviation triggers angry reactions. One source compared it to walking on eggshells. This mirrors the accounts from former royal staff that surfaced recently. The pattern of demanding behavior, rudeness towards subordinates, and lack of basic courtesy appears to have continued even after his fall from grace. If anything, some suggest it has intensified as his isolation has deepened. There are also reports of paranoia. Andrew allegedly believes he is being monitored, and that palace officials are looking for excuses to force him out. He reportedly questions staff about their conversations with others and has expressed suspicion that people are reporting back to King Charles. One former security officer, who worked on the Windsor estate, described Andrew as increasingly detached from reality. The officer noted that Andrew seems unable to accept that his circumstances have permanently changed. He still expects to be treated with deference and accommodation, despite having no official role or standing. This disconnect extends to his understanding of public perception. Sources say Andrew genuinely believes the British public will eventually forgive him, and that he will somehow return to public life. He reportedly watches news coverage of himself obsessively, and becomes angry when portrayed negatively. He has also allegedly discussed writing a book to set the record straight. Palace officials are horrified by this prospect. Any book from Andrew would inevitably address his association with Jeffrey Epstein, the allegations against him, and his version of events. The palace fears this would reignite media scrutiny and inflict fresh damage on the monarchy. They have reportedly warned him through intermediaries that any such book would result in complete severance of family ties and potential legal action if it breached confidentiality agreements. But Andrew has not ruled it out. His relationship with King Charles has deteriorated significantly. The brothers rarely speak. When they do communicate, it is through private secretaries rather than directly. Charles reportedly views Andrew as a liability who refuses to accept help or guidance. Andrew views Charles as punishing him unfairly. The rest of the royal family has largely distanced themselves as well. Andrew was excluded from Christmas celebrations at Sandringham. He was not invited to appear on the Buckingham Palace balcony for Trooping the Colour. He does not attend family gatherings or events. He is effectively exiled within his own family. His daughters, Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie, maintain contact, but even they have limited their public association with him. They understand that being too closely linked to their father could damage their own reputations and their children's future prospects. Within the royal fold, Sarah Ferguson remains his most consistent supporter. She has defended him publicly and privately, insisting he is a good man who made mistakes, but does not deserve to be cast out. However, even Ferguson has reportedly urged him privately to consider downsizing and accepting the palace's offers. But Andrew refuses to listen. Multiple sources describe him as stubborn to the point of self-destruction. He would rather face financial ruin than admit defeat by leaving Royal Lodge. This mindset has baffled even those sympathetic to him. The situation has also created practical complications for Windsor estate management. Royal Lodge sits in a prominent location visible from public areas. Its deteriorating condition is noticeable. The palace wants to either renovate it properly or repurpose it, but cannot do so while Andrew remains in residence under his long-term lease. Some have speculated that the palace might attempt to legally challenge the lease terms. If Andrew fails to meet his maintenance obligations under the lease agreement, the palace could potentially argue for termination. But such a move would be legally complex and publicly messy. Palace officials prefer to avoid it if possible. The stalemate continues. Andrew sits in his 30-room mansion, burning through his remaining resources to pay for security and basic upkeep. The palace maintains pressure by withholding support and ensuring his isolation remains complete. And the British public watches this slow-motion collapse with a mixture of fascination and contempt. Don't go anywhere, because the final chapter reveals the shocking reality. The mathematics of Andrew's situation are brutal and inescapable. Financial analysts, who have examined his known expenses and potential income streams, say he has perhaps 18 months before the money runs out completely. After that, he will face a choice between financial ruin or surrender. His annual security costs alone exceed £3 million. Add in Royal Lodge maintenance, living expenses, legal fees, and other costs, and his annual expenditure likely approaches £4 million. Without palace funding or legitimate income sources, this is unsustainable. Some reports suggest he has been exploring alternative revenue options. There have been rumors of potential deals with international media outlets for interviews. There has been speculation about speaking engagements or consulting arrangements with foreign entities. But all of these carry enormous risks and would likely trigger palace intervention. The palace has made clear that any attempt to monetize his royal status or connections would be met with severe consequences. They could strip him of remaining titles. They could terminate his lease at Royal Lodge on grounds of bringing the monarchy into disrepute. They could cut off all family contact and support. Andrew knows this, but he is running out of alternatives. One scenario being quietly discussed is a negotiated departure. Andrew would agree to leave Royal Lodge voluntarily in exchange for palace assistance with downsizing costs and a modest living allowance. This would allow him to maintain some dignity while resolving the standoff. But sources close to Andrew say he remains resistant to any such deal. Another possibility is that Sarah Ferguson intervenes more forcefully. Ferguson has maintained relationships across the royal family despite her own complicated history. She could potentially broker a compromise that saves face for Andrew while giving the palace what it wants. But this would require Andrew to accept reality, which he has consistently refused to do. The most likely outcome, according to palace insiders, is that Andrew simply runs out of money. When he can no longer afford security, the protective officers will leave. When he cannot cover maintenance, Royal Lodge will deteriorate further. When his financial situation becomes truly desperate, he will have no choice but to accept whatever terms the palace offers. This could happen within the next 2 years. At that point, Andrew would likely move to Frogmore Cottage, or another smaller property on a royal estate. He would live quietly, out of public view, supported by a minimal allowance from the family. His public life would be permanently over. But there is also a darker possibility. Some observers worry that Andrew's psychological state could deteriorate as his circumstances worsen. His apparent detachment from reality, his obsessive monitoring of media coverage, and his refusal to accept his changed status all suggest someone struggling with the magnitude of his fall. If he becomes truly desperate, he might do something reckless. He might give an explosive interview despite palace warnings. He might write a tell-all book that burns every remaining bridge. He might make public accusations against family members or associates. Any of these actions would be self-destructive, but potentially devastating to the monarchy. The palace is acutely aware of this risk. They have reportedly assigned staff to monitor Andrew's activities and communications as much as legally possible. They have prepared crisis response plans for various scenarios involving him. They are trying to contain a situation that could explode at any moment. Meanwhile, public opinion remains firmly against him. Polls consistently show that the vast majority of Britons believe Andrew should have no public role, and that he received appropriate consequences for his actions. There is little sympathy for his current predicament. Most see it as a natural result of his choices and associations. The younger generation of royals wants nothing to do with him. Prince William and Princess Catherine have made clear they will not associate with Andrew publicly. They view him as toxic to the monarchy's future. They have reportedly told palace officials they would support even more aggressive measures to distance the family from him. King Charles, despite being Andrew's brother, has accepted that protecting the monarchy must take priority. He has authorized the financial pressure campaign. He has excluded Andrew from family events. He has sent clear signals that there will be no path back to public life. This has caused personal pain for Charles, but he views it as necessary. The saga of Prince Andrew represents one of the most dramatic falls from grace in modern royal history. From a position of privilege, titles, and public status, he has descended into isolation, financial desperation, and historical infamy. The choices that brought him here were his own. The associations he maintained were his responsibility. The interview he gave was his decision, and now he sits alone in a mansion he cannot afford, surrounded by 30 empty rooms and the ghosts of what he used to be. The palace will not rescue him. The public will not forgive him. His family has moved on without him. The only question remaining is how much further he will fall before accepting reality. As one royal historian put it, Andrew's tragedy is that he still believes he is the prince he was, when the world has already decided who he really is. And that is a delusion no amount of money or stubbornness can sustain. If this story shocked you, smash that subscribe button and ring the bell for more explosive revelations about the royals the palace doesn't want you to see.